Alrighty, looks like we're live. Let me check that everything's up and running. And all good. 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 All good. All good. Good morning, anyone, or good evening, good morning, anyone joining in. As per usual, going to get started on the hour. All good. But let me know you're here. Good morning, anyone, or feel free to say hi in the chat. Joining in. You don't want to, don't do that either. That's fine. As per usual, going to get started on the hour. Got a few things to talk about today, but nothing. Good morning, anyone. That's going to be free to say hi in the chat. Joining in, anything like that. So as usual, we're going to get started on the hour. Good morning. Got a few things to talk about today, but nothing. Good morning, anyone. That's going to be free to say hi in the chat. Joining in, anything like that. So as usual, we're going to get started on the hour. Good morning. Got a few things to talk about. And also just a heads up for tonight's stream. I'm probably going to keep it a bit shorter. I've got to be up early in the morning. So like it says there, or there, probably keep it to 30 or 45 minutes, depending on how we go with the questions and that sort of thing. Obviously, if there's tons of questions, then we'll go longer, but otherwise, we'll see how we go. All right, I'll get started in about a minute or so. Probably got about 10 or so minutes of updates, maybe even 5 minutes, and then I have a few questions sent in as well, and then otherwise happy to take questions from the chat. Like I said, keep today's a bit shorter, I think, depending on how we go for time. Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to the second September CubeSkills live stream. For those who might have missed it last time or something like that, I was away in August and couldn't get something scheduled, so instead just doing two streams in September. It is currently 10 a.m. in New York on the 30th of September, midnight here in Australia. The plan for today's stream is pretty similar to normal. Just going to talk a little bit about what I've been up to, upcoming plans, and got some questions sent in through the email as well. But also at any time, feel free to send in any questions that you like via the chat. General updates before I get started. If you've sent in any videos for Solve Critiques, I was away for about 9 days or so. I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well. But I was away, and so I'm just getting back to those now. So for the next 4 days, at the moment I have 4 left to do. I've been keeping kind of track of that on the front of the website, but I'm going to be doing 1 each day from Monday until Thursday. So those should be all done if you've sent one in. And sorry for the slight delay, it was a little bit unexpected. So yeah, those will get done. And as always, if you have any other videos that you'd like to send me, if you haven't sent a Solve Critique video, I'm always more than happy to do those. Just depending on the schedule and stuff, it might take a week or 2 to get back to them. But normally, if I'm around at home, it should be no more than a couple of days. So I'm going to talk briefly about my kind of impromptu trip to the US, where I went for the Boston competition last weekend, and then that's kind of what's been happening in the past little while. Just been doing Solve Critiques on the website, and had that little trip. So I guess the story behind that was obviously that this Red Bull competition was kind of launched, I think it was earlier on in this year. I can't remember the exact date. It would have been about, actually, I don't even remember the date that it was launched. I think it was earlier this year, but there was a lot of, I guess, community backlash towards the event. Largely, it seems that, well, I figured due to Rubik's filing a lawsuit against the Cubicle, which, as most people know, the Cubicle is a US-based speed cubing store that does a fair bit for the community in terms of kind of hardware development, innovation, supporting competitions, supporting individual speed cubers. And so I guess many people saw that as an attack on not only the Cubicle, but more so the community. So it was, something that I didn't necessarily want to attend because of that. But I think it was about 3 weeks ago, it ended up being the case that the Cubicle kind of came to a settlement or came to an agreement with Rubik's and the Red Bull people, and agreed to help them out with their competition. And so because of that, I was kind of more comfortable in attending. I guess I'd wanted to go to the competition, but wasn't necessarily completely comfortable with it just because of all of the unknowns. I didn't know too much about the competition, what it would mean that I was supporting. But given that I guess both the Cubicle and I guess my sponsor GAN were happy to support the competition, and I trust that they are doing what is in the best interest of speed cubing in general, then I was happy to go along, and I'm very glad that I went along because it was lots of fun. So I guess one of the other reasons I wanted to go along as well is to kind of try and get a little bit more information about, what the, I guess, Red Bull and all of their many parties involved with the competition are kind of aiming to do. In the lead up to the event, I mean, I'd heard many different things from many different people. There were a lot of kind of rumors being thrown about firstly, like the extent of the involvement of Rubik's. Some people saying that, Rubik's is completely behind this competition, and then when you talk to any of the organisers, they say Rubik's has nothing to do with it, or very minimal involvement. So it's really hard to figure out exactly what was going on. So that's why I was fairly cautious and try to be quite careful about, I guess, my involvement with the competition. From what it's worth, all of the interactions and dialogue that I'd had with the Red Bull organisers and all that were quite good. They seemed to have quite a good grasp on the situation and are beginning to understand more about what the speed cubing community means to people. And so that's, I think, a good sign. I guess the second reason, this is again more of a rumour the second reason that I wasn't keen on participating, and this is probably more of a rumour, nothing that was ever confirmed, but from my as far as I know, it was the case that they were going to provide cubes and cubers wouldn't be able to use their own cubes. But I think, given the power and influence of the speed cubing community, they eventually folded on that term. And like this is only what I know to be true, but they allowed anyone to use any cubes, which is very, very good for speed cubers. And I guess lastly, the name Rubik's Cube World Championship was obviously very disrespectful to the long-standing history of actual WCA World Championships, and so there were many people offended by that. But luckily, I mean, they couldn't change that for this year, but fortunately they've made the gesture to change that for next year, which was kind enough. So those were kind of the three things, my three main issues with the competition, but given that they were, I guess, resolved all to varying extents, I was happy to go along. Decided to throw my hat in the ring. There wasn't really, I guess the qualifying mechanism was kind of weird. They held about 10 or 12, I think, competitions in various different countries. Most of them, I think at least half of them, were just in various countries in Europe. And so this kind of mechanism really restricted a decent amount of top competitors from actually being able to go and attend. And so what ended up happening was they handed out, via the Cubicle and via GAN, they handed out a bunch of different wildcard entries. I think there were about 7 or 8 different people who were kind of given a free pass to the finals in Boston. Again, this is something that isn't necessarily fair, but I think it was, I mean, complete fairness is probably not what they're aiming for. They're aiming to put on showcase a good event and highlight speed cubing. And so I'm sure in future editions it would be nice to have a more, I guess, a fairer qualifying mechanism as opposed to resorting to just handing out random wildcard entries. And I think that for this year's edition, particularly because it was a couple of weeks out from the event, it wasn't looking particularly good. I think it was very necessary for them to actually do that in order to make the event far more successful, because without the involvement of the Cubicle or without those sorts of wildcard entries, the competition would have been hardly as legitimate as it was. Oh, sorry, I've got a bit of a cold. All right. iSash says, thanks for the solve critique 2 weeks ago, it helped me a lot. A nice video about the 356X. Do you prefer it over the SM? It is apparently being released today. That was one of the questions I got sent in, so I'll talk about that a bit later on, about the 356X, as well as some other hardware stuff. I'll get back to the Red Bull now though. In terms of the competition itself, it was kind of interesting and fairly enjoyable to have like a competition with it was very different to have a competition with only kind of 16 or 18 plus year olds as opposed to lots of younger kids, and that was made the kind of environment and atmosphere quite different to a regular competition. Again, I don't know that the age restriction thing is a very good idea for speed cubing, because there are so many speed cubers under 16 years old who wouldn't be able to compete if Red Bull were to sponsor host future editions of this competition, which I think is quite unfortunate. But again, I don't know that there's a solution for that. The format was head-to-head, so they had a knockout tournament with seeding at the start, so it was kind of like a tennis draw. They had, I guess, 16 people in each event, although some didn't fill up entirely to 16. But in the finals, they had 16 people in each event. You go head-to-head, and so it gets down to 8 people, go head-to-head again, gets down to 4 people, and then you have the finals, so the finals and then the match for 3rd place. Different events were just regular speed cubing, so this was 3x3 best of 5 format. You had fastest hand, which is the one-handed event without inspection. That was best of 3. And then you had a female track for speed cubing, which I think there was a lot of controversy about that, but I think most female speed cubers at least were very glad that that was included, and I think can can be definitely a good thing. And then there was the re-scramble, which was, I guess, a match the scramble event. And so having 4 different events meant that unlike kind of a normal WCA competition, the schedule was a lot more relaxed, a lot more free time, things weren't as hectic. And with the, I guess, lower competitive numbers, it was, would have been far more easy to run from an organizer perspective. So having far less things to worry about in terms of, scorecards, worrying about schedules and groups, and maybe focus a lot more on, I guess, making it as viewer friendly as possible. That being said, I think the morning of the competition still probably wasn't very exciting at all for anyone watching, and from what I was told, their focus was heavily on kind of the final 2 hours of the competition. So that was all the semi-finals and the finals and the third place matches, which is really what they got a lot of footage from. And I think they presented it as all of the semi-finals, and then they had Stephen Brundage doing some magic tricks and stuff like that, and then all of the finals. So that was kind of interesting. I do know that, and I gave this feedback that like speedcubers do enjoy like statistics and like following results clearly and a lot of transparency there. So it would have been fun, I think, if I was a viewer, to be able to see, every single match between all of the cubers leading up to the finals. But again, they chose to do things differently, so that's fine as well. The head-to-head kind of format was quite interesting. So I did a 3x3 in the finals, and nothing changed drastically about the way that I was solving the cubes. It was more the interaction with the other cubers was quite a big thing. So there weren't too many actual rules. Like, you were completely allowed to just try and distract your competitor as much as possible. Most cubers weren't really used to this, but there were a couple of people like Kevin. I was up against Kevin in the round of 8, and he was just talking the whole time, trying to like put me off, which was quite fun. And the other thing that changed was, because you literally don't care about your times at all. Like, I don't care that if I get a 7 or 8 second solve that it's a bad solve. You're just trying to beat the other person. And so there were many times in all of the rounds that during my last layer or towards the end of my F2L or my OLL, I would look over at the other person's cube and decide whether or not I would solve more safely. So, if I was in the middle of OLL and I saw that my opponent, so I had 4 opponents, Dimitri, Kevin, Philip, and Bill Wang. If I saw that my opponent was still in their F2L stage, then I would kind of slow down and finish the cube more safely, because they didn't have any +2s or DNFs. They didn't have any +2s at the competition. They just had DNFs. So if your cube was off by a half turn, then it was just counted as unsolved, which seems, I guess, more logical from an audience perspective than kind of it's long-standing now, but it would seem to non-cubers like kind of an arbitrary +2. And so that was one thing that was quite important, was making sure that you didn't +2. So either if I was ahead of my opponent, I would kind of go a little bit slower and far more safe on my last layer, or if I could tell that I was just in line with my opponent's solve, then I would really try and kind of rush the finish of my solve and try and get it done as quickly as possible. So overall it was quite fun. Again, because it was the inaugural event, I don't know what their future plans are, because of all the community backlash and I guess some of the concerns with the event. There weren't a great deal of really top cubers there. There were certainly plenty of really, really fast opponents. The Via twins, Bill Wang, Alex Carlier, Tanza, Kevin was there. So there are a decent amount of top cubers, but definitely not as well represented as a standard kind of WCA World Championships. But it's still nice to get the win, and apparently there's some sort of fancy ring. All right. Now I've been going on for 15 minutes about the Red Bull Comp. If you have any questions, if anyone has any questions about the Red Bull competition itself, feel free to ask in the chat. If there is like substantial interest, then I might write a little bit of a blog entry about the competition itself and my thoughts on, I guess, the competition in the context of speed cubing, as well as just the competition experience itself. I'd like to remain fairly careful and cautious about all the things, all of these sorts of things, and kind of stay fairly measured and pragmatic. At the end of the day, like, we want to do the best thing for speed cubing, and whether that's, you know, doing these sorts of competitions or influencing the organizers of these sorts of competitions to make them better for speed cubers, then that's the goal, I guess. But at the end of the day, the community basically has all of the power, and I'm pretty sure the community can shape these competitions as much as we want. So after, okay, LBG asks, do you know if Red Bull will hold more common competitions than the World Championships? It seems really fun. I'm not good enough to make the finals or anything like that, and they're all pretty far away, so it's not worth the plane trip. So that's a good point. So as far as I can tell, and this seems like the most logical kind of progression for these sorts of things, is that I guess the WCA is, you know, the community organization, which holds thousands of competitions, over 1,000 competitions per year, open for all people across, you know, dozens and dozens of different countries and regions. And their goal is to, well, as it says on the mission of their website, is to have more competitions under more equal conditions with more fun and something like that. And I don't know that, like, Red Bull is not trying to do that. Red Bull is trying to put on like a big fancy event to try and showcase like the really top cubers and try and make the competition format as exciting as possible, and really try and, I guess, push that through their media channels and promote it to non-cubers as, I guess, an entertaining event. And so the benefit they would get from hosting, you know, random competitions, smaller competitions for everyone is probably very minimal as compared to the benefit they get from hosting kind of this big final battle in one city. And so something they discussed was something that was brought up throughout my stay, was whether or not their qualifying events were even needed, and whether they could just simply only hold the world the world finals each year, and not worry about, you know, organizing all these little qualifier events, because that was really stretching their resources and they don't know if it was worth it. So from my understanding, I really doubt that they would be looking to hold, you know, lots and lots of competitions. If anything, they would just look to hold like these big finals. And so, yeah, that's what it seems like. Yeah, Isaac, I'm not sure about what the live stream was like. I didn't really follow along with much of the coverage throughout the weekend. I was pretty busy, and yeah, didn't have like a SIM card or anything like that. From what I understand, they weren't really planning to do any sort of live stream of the event, and it was kind of a last minute thing that the Cubicle took on and streamed. And so, yeah, I'm really not sure if they had any like actual plans to live stream the event. I think they had tons and tons of cameras from all sorts of angles, and cameramen and stuff like that, and they were filming for most of the afternoon, but I don't think it was for the purpose of a live stream. It was probably for them to gather the footage to put together like the video of the event and the competition and release that at a later stage. But I do know that, I guess, yeah, live streams is something that cubers like, and people like seeing the results as they happen rather than kind of waiting a long time to see the finals. So it's not ideal, but yeah, I'm not sure what their plans are. Again, Red Bull is they're a media slash energy drink company, so they would probably have a lot more experience in figuring out or knowing and figuring out what people want to watch and consume. And live streams are good for, I guess, dedicated followers of any sort of sport or hobby because they know what's when it's on, what's happening. But for me, or for a non-Cuber, I don't know that they would just randomly watch like a live streamed event of some random hobby. They would probably prefer to watch, I guess, a well-produced video of a finals. And so, yeah, I have no idea what their plans are, to be honest. Isaac also asks, why did you only play 3v3 two-hand and not one-hand? I actually did one-hand. I went to the qualifier in Boston, so they had a qualifier event the day before the finals, and so I had a wild card for the 3x3 speed cubing event, and so I didn't have a wild card for the one-handed event, and so what I had to do was try and qualify for the one-handed finals the day before in Boston at the Boston qualifier. And what ended up happening was, as predicted, me and Bill Wang got to the finals, and Bill beat me in the finals, and Bill actually ended up winning the one-handed event overall. And so, yeah, I was a little bit annoyed at that. I think the optimal strategy definitely would have been for one of me and Bill to get a wild card for one-handed and one of us to choose a wild card for 3x3 so that we could compete in both of them at the finals. Because I guess it probably ended up being the case that the final match in the qualifier event between me and Bill probably was the deciding match for the overall winner. So yeah, I was kind of annoyed, but it's all right. That's their format and mechanism, so can't really complain. Then after Boston, so again, this was all kind of impromptu. I only planned it. I was only planning to go maybe a couple of weeks out from the competition, and so probably just practice some 3x3 in one hand in the lead up. Again, I've been away for about 9 days or so from home, and so been fairly busy with that sort of thing. That's why I haven't been posting the solve critiques very frequently. But yeah, now I'm home, I'll be getting back to that. After the competition, I went to New York with Eric Ackersdyke and Philip Vire and other people. We kind of did a bit of sightseeing. I was only there for a couple of days. Did a little bit of sightseeing and as well as visited the cubicle offices, which was quite a fun experience. I'm pretty sure that any Cuber that visits New York probably ends up visiting the cubicle offices just because it's kind of a unique thing to be able to go to some big kind of big store and see just how many cubes they have, just how many people are working there. So that was quite interesting and definitely a fun time, and I'm glad I went. Okay, I think that's all I had in terms of the Red Bull competition and trip that I just went on. Again, if anyone has any more questions on that, I'm happy to answer those. I think it's going to be interesting to see just what happens with it. I really don't have too much clarity. I've talked to some people. There doesn't seem to be any sort of clear plan or direction for the competitions as yet, or either that or I just don't know about it. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens, and at the end of the day, I would like to, I'd like to see that it's a good thing for speed cubing, basically. Liam says, I'm surprised they didn't fly Max or Keon out for OH wildcard. I'm pretty sure it was something that they offered to Max, but given his condition, it probably would have been a very, very stressful event for him in particular. Definitely a different type of atmosphere to kind of a standard WCA competition, and so I don't know that he would have enjoyed it very much. I'm sure I'm sure it probably interested him, and I'm sure he had the opportunity to go, but maybe given his condition, his parents might have wanted to be even more cautious about his involvement. Um, and I'm not sure about Kian, actually. Again, there were no qualifier events in Canada and only one qualifier event in the US. So, and I don't think Kian is affiliated with the Cubicle. I'm not sure what the relationship is there, but um, I'm sure if it continues, then he'd be interested in coming along. But yeah, I can't speak for Kian. Checkmate Keeper asks, obviously Red Bull is not as populated as the WCA for speed cubing competitions right now, but do you see that continuing? In other words, how do you see their competitions being in the future compared to WCA comps? Again, I think from what I can tell, it seems to be that they are in completely separate domains. Ideally, I'd like to see Red Bull, or it would be interesting to see Red Bull kind of host these really big once-a-year competitions. Well, not really big, like really kind of, really flashy, like once-a-year competitions with a different format. And yeah, get a bunch of fast cubers in and make it a really fun event for everyone there, and also for anyone to be able to watch this event. And the WCA, on the other hand, is the speed cubing community for everyone. So that's a potential outcome, but again, I have no idea. The main thing that I guess it's probably important and that has been stressed to like the organizers of this Red Bull competition is that they really should not step on the toes of the WCA, because the WCA is fairly representative of the speed cubing community as a whole. And so any sort of attack or like attempt to undermine the WCA is probably going to be taken pretty poorly by the community, as was evidenced. All right. So coming up on CubeSkills, yeah, it's been very, very busy couple of months, and so content has been at an all-time low. I think I flagged at the start of the year that content was definitely going to slow down, but I will have the next 5 weeks or so at home. I'm not going anywhere apart from next week. I'll talk about that in a sec. But yeah, the next 5 weeks or so are content weeks. And that is a promise. I'm not going anywhere. And so the plan is big cube example solves, mega mix example solves, and 3x3 example solves, as well as all of the solve critiques that are backlogged at the moment. Like I said at the start, there were 4 that I need to do, so I'm going to do 1 per day for the next little while. Next week, I'm actually off to Sydney and Canberra. I'm going to the Australian Nationals competition in Canberra this weekend. So that's going to be quite an exciting competition, and hopefully it will help us get a bit more experience for hosting the World Championships, as well as popping into Sydney before that. So I'm going to be away for about 5 days. But after that, yeah, from next Monday, I'll be completely devoted to making new content, because it's been a long time coming. Someone asked about my goals for Australian Nationals this weekend. Honestly, I've only really been practicing kind of 3x3 for the past month or so. So I probably need to practice a bunch of other events and big cubes this week, and we'll see how that goes. But ideally, my main goal is just to try and do quite well at 3x3, but we'll see how that goes. Question from I'd Rather Be Cubing. I'd Rather Be Cubing. Are you Jack that asked that question via email? Because if so, I have your question lined up. Let me know. Okay, so then I think this week they also have the China Championships from like Tuesday to Thursday, or from Monday to Wednesday or something like that. So that should be quite an exciting one to watch. I do know that there are a decent amount of really fast cubers attending that, and so I believe there'll be a live stream of that somewhere on the internet. So definitely something to tune into if you're interested in watching speedcubing events. Okay, Jack, yeah, I've got your question lined up, and it's the same question, so I will get to that one in a minute. So on that note, I'm on to some questions that were sent in via email. Ethan asks, I was wondering if you could discuss the GAN 356X in the stream. Some questions I have are, do you know when it will be released and how much it will cost? How does it perform, and will it only be available in stickerless? And how do you feel about the interchangeable magnets? And Isaac asked that earlier on, do I prefer the 356X over the SM? So in terms of released, I'm fairly sure it's actually going to be released today. Let me just check the Cubicle. I don't know if they have a pre-order or anything like that. Doesn't really look like it at this stage. Maybe it would just be released on the GAN website initially, but I'm pretty sure it's being released today. I'm assuming the price is going to be quite high, as is the case for most GAN cubes. I don't really have any power over that. Obviously, the cheaper the better, but it's a business. How good does it perform? So I think I mentioned this in my YouTube video where I wrote a small review of the cube itself. The cube I feel is quite different to the SM. When I got it, it was definitely a bit faster, a bit lighter. It felt more like a large version of the 354, although personally the 354 for me was way too quick and uncontrollable. This feels like a more controllable, far more buttery and smooth version of the 354, but it's 56 millimeters is kind of how I would describe it. What were the other questions? Do I prefer it to the SM? I think they're different. Some people might prefer the SM. Some people might prefer the 356X. At the moment, I'm really not sure. I used the 356X in the Red Bull competition, and it was okay. I mean, my times were okay, but it wasn't really I didn't really get a chance to do a great deal of solves on it. So I'm pretty sure I'll use the 356X at the Nationals this weekend, and we'll see how that goes. And if it goes well there, then I'm sure it will be my main continuing into the future. I'm pretty sure they're going to release stickerless and stickered versions, so black plastic and stickerless versions. And how do I feel about the interchangeable magnets? I don't know that it's like a feature that anyone was yelling out for. Like most people probably prefer magnetic cubes, but it's a nice addition to the cube, I guess, so that anyone can always, if you want a magnetic cube, you can use it. You can put magnets in it. If you want to take them out, then it'll only take you a minute to take out the magnets. I know that in various different communities around the world, people prefer different magnet strengths. So, for example, I'm pretty sure in like China and Asia, more generally, they don't like strong magnets in their cubes at all. I've heard stories of, I guess, Chinese cubers or Chinese designers who pick up like a Cubicle or a Speed Cube Shop magnetic big cube and just completely hate it because the magnets are way too strong. Whereas there are many other cubers who would pick up like a weak magnet cube, perhaps one from China, and say that it's trash. So I think there are certainly different preferences in terms of magnet strength, and I don't know that, you know, an individual would be changing the magnets too often, but I think just the ability to completely change the magnets is useful for various different areas around the world where like different magnet strengths have become the norm. So that might be the thinking behind that. Yeah, Isaac says, it says September 30th. I can't see anything anywhere. Maybe it's on the GANCube website, because it is currently September 30th. And actually in Australia it's October the 1st. So yeah, I'm not sure where the 356X is, but I'm sure there'll be more news soon. Okay, Glenn asked, are wide D moves a bad habit? If not, when should you use them instead of a rotation, for example? So what Glenn's talking about is, let's say you're doing kind of F2L, oops, where are we going? Here. Let's say you're doing F2L, and you want to do a rotation. He's asking whether you should do wide D moves like that, or just rotate and insert. So these wide D moves, what they can do is move a slot without moving the last layer. And so these can be useful in certain situations. The main thing that I would be warning people about is not doing anything really weird in terms of finger tricks for wide D moves. So sometimes I see people, when they're doing these moves, kind of just grip the top of the cube and like use their maybe middle or ring finger to like, you know, push this. And if you're only gripping the top layer of the cube, that's going to be quite an unstable finger trick. So that's something I would suggest that people avoid. But if you're doing these wide D moves, say with your thumb, like that, then that's a very minimal regrip. And so I think that's fine. The couple of situations where I think it's really good are an F2L case like this, where you've got this corner up here and this edge in this front right slot, and you can do something like R, U, R prime, D, like that, R prime, U prime, R. And the mirror of that as well. And then yeah, the mirror of that. So for example, if you're taking this back right edge piece out with this corner here, you can do R prime, U prime, R, wide D prime, so wide D prime like that, and then R, U, R prime without a significant regrip. So yeah, they can be useful, but use them with caution and don't do any like crazy regrips or finger tricks for them. So Jack asked in the chat and also via email about his 3x3 average. His average is high, 13 seconds for 3x3. He knows full OLL, PLL, and half of COLL. What should he practice to get sub 12? So this is quite a general question. So there's not anything that I can answer too specifically. I guess the comment that I will make is that if you know full OLL and PLL, then that's kind of enough for you for the moment to get to sub 12. Learning COLL won't really add much speed, if any speed at all, to your solves. COLL is more something that's useful for recognition purposes as well as for one-handed and big cubes, but for 3x3 speed solving, it's not going to help you at this stage. So don't focus on learning more algorithms for COLL. Make sure that the OLLs and PLLs that you have learnt are really, really good. So make sure that your finger tricks are good, that you're comfortable with executing them all very quickly, because if you have a bunch of OLLs and PLLs that you've learnt, then it may be the case that you're not happy with some of them, or you've learnt easy algorithms for some of them which aren't actually that quick, or your finger tricks for an algorithm aren't actually that good. So it can be a good idea to go through all of your OLL and PLL algorithms and just fine tune them, refine them, make sure that you're able to execute them all quite well. In terms of other general tips, if you're at high 13 seconds, at this stage, something that you want to try and do is definitely look ahead into your first F2L pair during inspection. Try and plan your cross and your first F2L pair in inspection if possible. Your look ahead should be at high 13 seconds. There's probably still work that you can do on your F2L look ahead. Again, I haven't seen any videos of your solves or anything like that, so this might be completely incorrect, but this is just like kind of general advice if you're at high 13 seconds. The other thing is, actually no, at high 13 seconds you can definitely just get away with just doing efficient F2L pairing with solid look ahead, efficient crosses, and have reasonable turning speed on your last layer cases. Again, anything more specific than that is probably something that I would have to see like a video of your solves to try and diagnose. Oh my god, it's Sebastian Weyer. No way. Legendary Sebastian. Sebastian Weyer asks, how do I get sub 6 on 3x3? And I have two answers for you. Firstly, you can develop max park turning speed and look ahead, which is not going to be possible for you, Sebastian. Secondly, you can probably just learn more algs and also be color neutral. Basically, Sebastian, just learn, learn full ZB and color neutrality and practice a lot. And I think you can get sub 6 one day. And yes, it's Sebastian's legendary brother of Philip Fire. That's going to be about it for today, I think. If you have any more questions, feel free to post them in the chat. Like I said, I was going to kind of do a shorter stream this evening. Yes, no worries, Sebastian. Like I said, I was going to do a shorter stream this evening. So I'm going to head off in about 5 minutes or a couple minutes, unless there's any more questions in the chat. Next stream will probably be sometime in the middle of October. But until then, feel free to continue sending in any sort of solid critique videos, any comments, stuff like that, any emails. Always get back to those, so it'll be good. And thanks for the compliment on the sweater. It's great. I haven't got the ring yet, but I'll make sure I feature it next time. All right. Okay, Isaac has one more question. Any advice for somebody who goes to his first comp but is alone? So, firstly, it depends on your age. Like, if you go to a competition, actually, most speedcubers are quite welcoming. I've definitely seen people, 20 plus years old, kind of sit down and hang out with cubers who are like 12 or 13 years old. It's not super weird to actually do that. Considering it's such a niche hobby, I think most people are comfortable with just hanging out with other cubers because it can be quite a novelty for people. I would say, depending on your personality as well, like you should, if you're introverted, it can be very good to just make sure to try and get to know some different people around the competition. If you really don't like the idea of kind of sitting down with people and introducing and talking to them, what you can try and do is help out at the competition. That can be a good way to get to know people and meet some people. So like judging people, helping out with any running or scrambling, depending on like your competency, and yeah, that can be a good way. Again, depending on your age and experience. Other than that, I would just say try to meet as many people as possible, and don't worry about your competition performance because it's your first competition. Like you'll probably mess it up, but everyone does. LBG asks, around what speed do you just need to learn a bunch of algs to get faster? So like this varies a lot. The main algorithms that are going to get you faster, significantly faster with CFOP are PLL and OLL. And so if you're like sub 20 and you're still using 2-look PLL, then learning full PLL can like shave off 1.5 or 2 seconds off your solves, which is almost like 10% of your solve time. So there's that. And then again with OLL, if you're like 12 or 13 seconds without full OLL, then learning full OLL will probably shave off 1 second of your solve time, which is again close to 10%. So those are the, I guess, most significant areas in which you can just learn algs to get faster. Anything more than that is going to be very, very marginal. So even if you know full CFOP with full OLL and PLL, if you're learning all these different subsets, like last slot subsets or last layer algorithm sets, then it's not going to have a huge impact initially unless you learn like the entire set. And so, for example, the example I always give is, Max Park. He just knows OLL and PLL and maybe a couple of other small things, but you can get sub 6 with just OLL and PLL. All right, I think that's just about it for now. Like I said, I'm always available via email. I'm going to do some solve critiques this week. And then after Nationals, going to be going hardcore on making more videos and tutorials and content, because it's been quite a while. If anyone has like a particular request that I do a bit of a write-up about the Red Bull competition, then I can do that. Might be interesting. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching. I hope it was interesting. I don't think I did too much kind of tutorial stuff today, but I hope you learned a thing or two. And yeah, I'll see you next time, especially Sebastian. Good luck getting your sub 6.